To try to understand the Russian perspective, let's speak to Sergei Markov, who is a former spokesperson for Vladimir Putin. Good morning to you.
Good morning. But it's morning not good.
Sorry.
It's very bad morning for everybody. It's bad morning for Russia because partial mobilization. Russian defense minister claims that 300,000 young people will be mobilized to the Russian army to fight. But also bad news for people in London, because Vladimir Putin directly told that he will be able to use nuclear weapons against Western countries, against you, against Great Britain. It means if Western countries will continue aggression against Russia. We regard this war not as war between Russia and Ukraine, absolutely. We regard this war as liberation by Russian army, Ukraine, which is occupied by Western countries in their aggression against Russia.
Okay, so Sergei Markov, let's just take things one thing at a time. So you are accepting that Vladimir Putin, feeling the need to call up an extra 300,000 people, young people, to fight in Ukraine, would suggest perhaps that things are not going well for Russia in Ukraine?
It's absolutely clear. The situation in Russia now for Russian army in Ukraine became more poor. Russia lost something about 5% of those territory which Russian army took in the previous time. It's the main reason of this because Russia is a free democratic country and Ukraine is a new totalitarian country. In Russia we have no one mobilization before. In Ukraine we have 4 waves of total mobilization. And as a result, Ukraine, which is 5 times by population less than Russia, actually, now Ukraine nevertheless has twice bigger army than Russian army on the front. It means that the level of mobilization Ukraine 10 times more than level of mobilization in Russia.
Okay.
In fact, Ukraine is not democratic country, but a repressive, totalitarian country right now.
Oh, okay. You've made that point many times before, and it's your belief. Of course, there are many people who will say this is not true. Can we talk about nuclear weapons? What Vladimir Putin seemed to be saying is that if Western countries or NATO threaten us with nuclear weapons, then we also have nuclear weapons and we will use them. Who has threatened Russia with the use of nuclear weapons?
There are some marginal politicians use this threat, but of course, I think Vladimir Putin meaning that it's not nuclear weapons which can be used, but if Western countries will be more involved in the war in Ukraine by supporting Russophobic repressive Ukrainian regime, if will be attacking against Russian territory, sometime Russia will have to think about using nuclear weapons, not against Ukrainians, but against NATO militaries who will appear on those fronts.
But how is it Russophobic to try to guarantee the independence of Ukraine, which is not part of Russia?
Ukraine was a part of Russia during many centuries. Ukraine was independent before 2014 when United States overthrown last democratic elected president and imposed puppet regime. Russian suggestion for the peace is very clear. Russia ready to stop fighting immediately if would be some conditions. And Joe Biden, it's personal war of Joe Biden should make the decision. It's very clear. Stopping military operation, immediately stopping terror against Russians on Ukraine, then dismantling of all terroristic neo-Nazi organization, all political prisoners, and there are dozens of thousands of them, and you disinform about this. You don't get information in Great Britain about this. Dozens of thousands of political prisoners. They should be immediately liberated and allowed to take part in political activity. Russian language, the language of majority of people in Ukraine, should get official status, and the policy of violence derussification
Right.
in Ukraine should be stopped.
Okay, Sergei Markov, just on that point, if you could answer briefly, you were talking about Russian speakers in Ukraine. These referendums that are apparently going to take place in Lugansk, Donetsk, Kherson, and Zaporizhia. What do you think the likely result of those referendums will be?
Russian sociology groups asking people about this, and possible result: 80% of those who live there, but not about refugees. Talking about those who live, 80% will take part in the referendum. 80% will vote for these regions to join Russia, and Russia will be ready to recognize this result of referendum. It will take these regions to the part of Russian Federation, and I think it will happen in the last days of September or first days of October.
But Sergei, how credible is it that 80% of people in these areas are in a free and fair election, a referendum, going to vote that they want to be part of Russia?
Oh, it's very easily. They dream to be part of the Russia during all this 21st century. All of them are Russian speaking. Can you imagine? You can go to any city of those regions, and you see 90% of them speak Russian language, but Russian language is prohibited in all official spheres. They are Russians, in fact. But Ukrainians, it's not those who are not Russian. Ukraine is just regional big Russian. Ukrainians like Siberians, like people on Ural, like people in other Russian regions. Ukraine was during many centuries as part of big Russia.
Okay.
So these people regard themselves both Ukrainians and Russians.